This is the teardown of the brand new iPhone 7. This is a 32 gigabyte rose gold model, straight out of the box. Go ahead and get in the settings just so you can see it. It's running iOS 10.0. That's a 32 gigabyte model. Let's go ahead and get into the teardown. I'm going to go ahead and power it down. Now the first thing you need to do in the iPhone teardown is take out the bottom two Pentalobe screws. These are proprietary screws used mainly by Apple. Actually, I think only by Apple. We're going to go ahead and take those out. There's two of them. It's kind of cool because they do match the color of these phones pretty well. These are rose gold screws. Once you have that, the reason why this phone is waterproof is there's an adhesive gasket all the way around this screen. In order to get this gasket, there are two methods. You can either heat this phone and then use an ice Eskimo, or you can heat this phone and use a suction cup or some other form of suction object. So we're going to use the ice Eskimo. What we're going to do is we're going to take the ice Eskimo, go in directly underneath the edge of the glass, push down. You want to get this tip of this ice Eskimo down into the phone. You're going to lift up slightly, kind of bring it in down towards the edge, and turn ever so slightly like a key. You're going to do this on the other side now. And now you're going to bring your Eskimo, see how we have it slightly open, down the edge of the phone, turning like a key ever so slightly until you get the device open almost all the way. Now this iPhone is different than all other iPhones because of the way it opens. To open this, you're going to grab the phone itself and the screen itself, pull slightly down. You can see just how far down we had to pull. And this phone opens to the side. Now the first thing you want to do in any phone repair once you have the device open is disconnect the battery. And the battery is underneath this plate right here. This also houses your digitizer assembly, or your digitizer cables, your LCD cables. Go ahead and get these 4 screws out. Another cool change to the iPhone is they switched from 000 Pentalobe or 000 Phillips screwdrivers to 000 Tri-Wing. This is really the first time I've seen this in Apple. They are a little bit harder to strip. You can put a little bit more force on them, but I think it was just a change to prevent people from really working on the device. Go ahead and pull out this plate. And here we have your digitizer and LCD connector and your battery. So the battery, we're just going to use our fingernail, get up underneath there, and pull that up. Let's go ahead and get the Digi and LCD connector as well. Now, you're not done quite yet. You can't separate the LCD from the body of the phone because you have these 2 screws here, which are holding down your proximity sensor. These are actually a 000 Phillips. Apple kind of switched it up with that as well. They use multiple different types of screws internally. There are 2 screws that holds down another plate. Once those 2 screws are out, the plate can slide out to the side of the phone. We can get our fingernail in underneath this proximity sensor connector. We're going to use this metal ice Eskimo. Since the device is off, there's not as much chance of shorting out a phone. Alright, and there's your display. We're going to set the phone off to the side. We're going to get into this display now. Most of the screws in this display are Tri-Wing, except for the screws in the ear speaker, loudspeaker assembly. The reason why the iPhone 7 is stereo is because not only does it have the internal speaker at the bottom, the ear speaker doubles as an external speaker. So we're going to go ahead and take off that assembly. There's actually a bracket that holds it down. There are 3 Phillips screwdrivers in that. Once you get these 3 screws out, the bracket holding down the camera will move out of the way. You can pull your camera back. You can take out these 2 screws holding in the loudspeaker assembly or your ear speaker, depends on what you're using it for. Once you have those two screws out, the ear speaker will lift out. Now the proximity sensor in this phone is bent kind of weird. The easiest way I found to get it out is with your iSesamo. Come under this edge, pull up ever so slightly until you get underneath the contacts for the ear speaker. Just wiggle it down while prying up ever so gently. And then this whole thing will fold over to the other side. Where the proximity sensor is seated, you'll have to get up underneath it and kind of pull up gently. And that is your full proximity sensor. Once proximity sensor is out, I would move on to the Touch ID assembly, and that is held in with your 000 tri-wings. There are 4 screws holding the bracket in. There we go. But they said like I could try to sell that like to someone on Facebook. And the cool thing about this is the home button doesn't click anymore. It's actually set in place, and the Taptic engine is actually what creates your feedback, and there's screws holding this button in place. So we'll go ahead and take this bracket up, and now we're going to separate the connector right here just by getting the iSesamo in between the 2 pieces of the connector. And there we go. Now this connector actually sits in the connector. So we're just going to slowly pull up on here. I want to try and get this connector out of the way if possible. Slowly pull up. Be very gentle. I don't know if the Touch ID is married on this device or not, like in past generations. Kind of cool on this, there's a gasket around it, and it actually goes from the front of the phone now, not from the back. So it'll actually slide out of the front. Just a little bit of pressure from this side of the phone will push it out. Now, once those screws are out, you're ready to take off the LCD backplate. There are 6 screws holding it in, all 000 tri-wing, and they're down the sides.
Well, either way, I can come back in here and you guys can still buy it, right? Like,
Give me
like,
just a second. Alright, now once those screws are out, you're ready to take your iSesamo and lift up on the LCD backplate. Be careful not to get under the 3D touch sensor, you can damage it. I'm going to go and stand this on end. You can see that the actual cables are now adhered to this plate. So what you do is you take your iSesamo, get it in between the cables and the plate, and just turn ever so slightly. You don't want to tear this. And there's your LCD backplate. And that is the full teardown of the LCD. I don't see any more screws needing to come out to do a replacement, but we'll add to this video if we have to in the future. So we're going to go and throw it back together. This is just the LCD, so assume this is a new LCD. Since this is the day this phone came out, we do not have access to an LCD yet. So, fold down your cables. Your plate just sits back down on top. Line up all the side mounts. And the adhesive will re-adhere. So go ahead and put back in all your LCD screws. There are 6 of them, tri-wing, 000s. These tri-wings don't like to work with a magnetic screwdriver as well as Phillips do. Okay, we're gonna try it this way. That seemed to work a little bit better. Just laying the screen down and kind of wiggling the screw on the end. Alright, so the 6 screws are back in. Going to go ahead and put back in the home button assembly. Remember, the cable goes up through the face of the phone, and then the home button just sits down in the hole. The cable where it plugs into actually goes in between the flex and the connector. And as always, there's a locator pin on the display right here. You can go ahead and locate it down with that. Go ahead and push that down and connect it. Alright. Now we're going to slide this cover up underneath the 2 mounts on the back plate. It did come out that way. Oop. There we go. There's a locator pin right here that'll help you locate that. Put these 4 screws back in. Remember, the center screw of these 3 right here actually holds the button in place. I kind of like that design a lot better just because the buttons were kind of flimsy in the past models. Man, I missed my Phillips. There we go. Alright, we got the home button back in. It's time to move on to the proximity sensor. You got your 2 locator pins on the connector right here. They're going to locate onto 2 tabs there. Remember, you need to actually put the proximity itself into its well first, since it does fold back onto it. Okay, there we go. Okay, 2 locator pins are in place. Push down your proximity sensor into the well. Just make sure everything gets lined up properly. There we go. Once your proximity sensor is in place, go ahead and put in your ear or loudspeaker assembly and screw in the 2 Phillips screws on the bottom side that were holding it in place. Once those 2 screws are in, you can put your camera down. It may pop out, that's okay. Get that screw out, put the bracket in place, it'll hold your camera in place. And put the 3 screws that hold that back in place. There are 2 on the right hand side and 1 on the left. They are of different sizes. Always make sure you're not mixing up screws, because a screw in the wrong place can destroy a phone. Once your ear speaker assembly is back in place, you're actually ready to put your LCD back on the body of the phone. I'm going to go ahead and just connect all the connectors back into place except the battery, just because it'll kind of help you line everything back up. up top, 2 on the bottom. And I'm assuming the 2 on the bottom also somehow use the Touch ID sensor, since there's not a third altogether. So I'm sure it runs through one of those two. I'm not sure which one. Let's go ahead and put this back in place. This just slides in. This is the cover to the proximity sensor connector. I think those are Phillips as well. Yep, those are Phillips. If you do mix up screws, I think the difference between Phillips and Tri-Wing will help you sort them out in the long run. There we go, those 2 are in place. Now that those 2 are in place, we're going to go ahead and hook the battery back up and put the plate back over the battery. Four screws hold this plate in place. They're all Tri-Wing. I like to start with the longest one just because it's the easiest one to get in. And that's the far right. Man. There we go. Okay. And then the top. Go one down. Bottom one, if I can get that to stick to my screwdriver. So far every screw in this phone is magnetic. It's not like the 5, I think in the 5C, 5S, they all had one non-magnetic screw. Alright, once all your screws are back in place, go ahead and lay your screen back down on your phone. Pull it ever so slightly down. There are hooks on the top of your screen. 3 of them. You want to get those in under the edge of the top of the phone. Push up. And then start working your way up the phone, pushing it all back into place. And your adhesive will re-adhere. I can't guarantee this will be waterproof when it's done, but it will stay down well due to that adhesive. Once you have that all back in place, you're ready for your 2 Pentalobe screws on the bottom. Let's go ahead and fire it back up, make sure it still works. There you have it. It's the LCD replacement for the iPhone 7.